I would say I buy new clothes probably once every 2 weeks maybe.
Once every 1 or 2 months because, I'm like, oh, I can't spend money on clothes. But when I do, I tend to buy in large amounts.
When I'm switching wardrobes, it is usually during like the holidays.
Maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months.
Not that frequently.
It's like I'm about to go off to college.
Or when I find something really, really cool that I want to buy.
And I do usually go with my friends. So I'll be walking around and we just ravage every store that we can find, actually. We scroll through shelves like it's fun. I don't know. Yeah.
Some people know and some people don't know that the United States alone produces about 35 billion pounds of textiles, disposed textiles a year.
And 70% of it's going to landfill.
So in the landfill, if the fabric is cotton or plant-based, basically what happens is it decomposes over a period of months or maybe a couple of years. This leads to the production of greenhouse gases such as methane, and can also lead to the production of leachates when the rainwater rushes over the fabric. The cotton chemicals, the chemicals used to create the cotton and the dyes used to dye the fabric leach off into the water. When rainwater leachates exit the landfill, they have a real potential to cause harm for human health because they can contaminate drinking water. Same with landfill gases that are generated during the process of decomposition. When synthetic fabrics go to a landfill, they remain there for a very long time. So while a cotton plant-based fabric takes about a couple months or a couple years to decompose, a synthetic fabric can take anywhere from 30 years to hundreds of years. So things like polyester, anything that is synthetic or petroleum-based, takes an extremely long time to decompose in a landfill.
There is an issue because the landfills in the United States are predominantly located near communities of color and near lower income areas. So there's an issue of environmental injustice in terms of who is dealing with the health effects of the landfills where textile waste is predominantly being disposed in the United States.
So moving on from landfills, the next 15% of textile waste is sent to incinerators, where it is quite literally burned. And so most incinerators in the United States are used to generate energy, so the burning of the textile generates energy that can then be used to power really anything. So the fabric really just burns. However, when the fabric burns, there are a lot of pollutants that emerge from the fabric during that process. And so it's really important that those incinerators are well regulated so that they capture all of those pollutants. Now, when it comes to the landfills and when it comes to the incinerators, not 100% of these chemicals can be captured. So there is going to be some environmental impact for the people living nearby these landfills.
But when clothes go back to home, West Africa, a lot of it's given out to family. They'll make use of it or they'll fix it.
The final 15% of textile waste is recycled. And so basically, first of all, it's important to point out that this is a small amount. Only 15% of textiles are recycled. And among that, much of this involves simply shipping clothing to other countries. So what happens in the US with clothing is people reuse it, people downcycle it, which means to create something like insulation or stuffing for furniture by shredding the clothing. But up to half of clothing is not used for that purpose. It's actually just literally shipped abroad to other countries, where it's sent primarily to the global south, to countries who have less advanced municipal waste systems. So all of those environmental effects and health effects I was just talking about, they're going to landfills or open air dumps where those effects are not going to be captured and contained, so they're going to ease out into the environment. This means that when we send clothing from the United States, from Europe, to other countries, there's a potential to have a much bigger environmental impact in those countries than it would have had in the United States or Europe.
Originally, years ago, when there was sort of a thought that if we collected, disposed clothing here in the U.S. and we shipped it elsewhere, that people were getting to either sell it in overseas markets or use it, and that it was being donated and recycled in that sense. My name is Julia DeVoy. I am the Dean of Undergraduate Students in the Lynch School of Education and Human Development. I'm the PI, along with my co-PIs, on a Type 2 Schiller Institute for Integrated Sciences and Society grant, and I am a doctor in the field of developmental psychology. What we found, actually, is that any of these clothes that are sort of ending up in these markets is actually putting more people out of work in different countries abroad than it is helping anybody through like thrift store sales or markets overseas. In fact, a lot of seamstresses and tailors and clothes makers all over the world have been directly displaced from their employment because of all the clothes that are ending up over there overseas.
So our team actually did a study to look at this question to explore whether people in the United States produce textile waste at equal rates according to different demographic traits. And what we found is that people with higher incomes actually generate a lot more waste than people with lower incomes. So in the state of Florida, where we did this study using Florida data, people with higher incomes generated 96 pounds of textile waste per year, compared to people with lower incomes who generated only 55 pounds per year. So that's almost double for people with higher incomes. So this really shows that textile waste in this country is not something that everyone's contributing to equally. It's really a smaller part of the population, the wealthier part of the population that has more money and access to resources, who is consuming fashion at a much higher rate.
And a lot of times, again, it is women and children of color who are most impacted negatively by this process. So it's clearly an environmental racism issue, clearly. We don't have all of the answers right now. What we hope to do with the project, what our goal is with the project, is to make people more aware. And then we hope to inspire innovators, engineers, design thinkers, environmentalists, public health advocates. We hope to inspire people to then design and think about other things that we can do. We know we don't have all the answers, and we know that we need lots of fine minds in this space in order to move ahead. We really thought about it for a long time and very carefully, that if we published on this, that it was going to reach an academic audience, and we wanted that. We very much wanted that scholarly audience to be part of this. But we also wanted people to be just able to learn more about it. So we broke it down into 3 different goals. There was the research publication goal in the grant, there was the educational module goal in the grant, and then we also really clearly recognize that public art is powerful.
So I would say that art and science have only recently, in recent history, become 2 distinct things. That at one point, if you certainly look at the history of people doing scientific work or artistic work, that from the age of Leonardo, right, there was always a real connection between arts and science. So biologists, they had to know how to draw because there weren't illustrators to do that work for them. They did that themselves. People like Samuel Morse, who was a very accomplished painter, is also the same Morse of Morse code and the telegraph. So I think those connections between art and science have always been there. And only more recently that as we've specialized into really distinct bodies of knowledge, I think have those things separated. So certainly some of my colleagues and I was involved in helping to build a movement called STEAM, that is science, technology, engineering, arts and design. That's the A, and mathematics. And so I've been a long-time advocate since I was young, but certainly building that, at least helping to build that movement, which really sort of acknowledged that you really can't do one without the other. So I see those as being 2 very different ends of a creative spectrum, right? That in both cases it takes a lot of creativity to be an artist designer. It takes a lot of creativity to solve scientific problems, to build engineering systems, and so to me they're essentially the same. So I would say it's not a question of how do they work together. It's how on earth could they work independently.
My interest in collaboration is when you bring disparate parts together, it almost simulates nature. There's unpredictability, and there's ways of solving problems that different contributors offer. And so it's very unexpected, and it draws viewers in. And then the viewers have to imagine their own personal histories and their own associations. My name is Mark Cooper. I am a director of undergraduate studies for studio art and a professor at Boston College. And I am primarily an installation artist working in all media: wood, ceramic, video, photography, collage, printmaking, responding to sites and spaces and ideas. Actually, I met with several groups of students and described the issues and the goal of creating an installation around this topic. So I presented the idea of, well, shelving to students as a start, but we had this open discussion where they nominated ideas. We voted and, basically started the collaborative project by getting their input.
We collected the textiles from Boston College students, the Boston College community. So these are just simple things that BC students no longer had a use for. And there was a ton of it. We had so much of it that we couldn't even use all of it in the textile sculpture.
Why are there so many clothes? And I think that question is an entry point to curiosity and inquiry.
My name is Brian Smith, and I'm a professor and Associate Dean of Research in the Lind School of Education and Human Development at Boston College. So we developed the learning modules on textile waste as a way to accompany the Aftermath sculpture and the big simulators that people also get to see in the full exhibit. Partially the learning modules were ways, again, to step away from what you see. You're at the exhibit, you witness the sculpture, you go, wow, I'm really curious about this. Now you can step away, you can go online. And you can go through these learning modules to learn more. So part of, I think, what we wanted to do with this, and it's something that art is great at, is to stimulate questions, to stimulate people's interest. And then once that's there, and they go, I want to learn more, again, we lead them to these learning modules that can help.
When someone walks in to see our art exhibit, they can scan a code that I believe is on the wall or posted in different places, and they can be directed toward our learning modules. Our primary goal was making sure that this topic is shared with as broad of an audience as possible. So I think that's really where the education side of this project has come into play, making a really complex and really scary topic digestible for a variety of audiences.
It's not an easy answer. There's not like an easy set of, here's what you can do if you don't want to put it in the Planet Aid box, because you realize now you've become aware that, maybe it's not aiding the planet in the way that you had been led to believe. These are things that are being worked on, and the more we start to actually amplify, examine, and shine light on these questions, the more that people are going to generate, innovative ideas for how we should be using this stuff.
It's a problem where if you solve one part of the problem, another part of the problem shows. So then you have to patch that hole up. But as you go to patch that hole up, another hole opens. I am Marcus Conley. I am an artist and fashion design student at the University of Delaware. Cutting down on production in general would help that, but then, if you cut down on production, you cut down on profit. And, if you cut down on profit in these countries that need this profit for the people to survive, then you cut down on these people's livelihoods. Every reaction has an opposite and equal reaction, and it has to be thought about in that way because of how locked every facet of the fashion industry is. Then you also have to look at it, is what's going on right now not working? Because it's working for somebody. If it wasn't working for somebody, it wouldn't be happening. Just because there's no definitive answer does not mean there aren't things that can be done to help a little bit, to mitigate certain things, Just because you can't completely fix the foundation doesn't mean you shouldn't, fill up some cracks while you can. A thing that, can be done that I personally do is upcycle clothing. I think upcycling is one of those things that does help short term that will also help long term. Upcycle clothing is literally just taking, old clothing and making it new, whether that's sewing two pieces together, whether that's deconstructing it, right? If you have a pair of pants that no longer fit, the legs are too long, you can cut it, now you got shorts. And then take those scraps of, the legs and let's put that patch on a jacket somewhere, right? And we'll make this boring leather jacket, now it has some black jean patches on it, now it's something new. That's upcycling. It's like sampling in music. You're making a pair of clothes from another pair of clothes, like these jeans, right? I had a pair of gray Gap jeans and I had a NASCAR t-shirt, and now I have NASCAR jeans.
The Make Fashion Clean initiative in Accra, Ghana has used upcycled denim to make shopping bags.
Make Fashion Clean has a number of objectives, but one of them is to collaborate with artisans in Ghana at the MFI Foundation, which is a non-governmental organization that employs somewhere between 10 and 20 artisans at a time to create living wages and meaningful employment through upcycling textile waste into new products that can be sold locally and also in the United States.
I'm Matilda Lartey, the Managing Director of MFI Foundation. I see so many people wearing imported second-hand clothes because they are cheaper than the locally made clothes. In 10 years, I wanted to see the imported second-hand clothes that Americans ship to Africa should be less, and even it should be a selected things that will be of good use. My hope regarding clothes made in Ghana should exploit in the country and across the world. MFI means Matilda Flow Inclusion. We started creating products out of second-hand clothes because first we buy our organic cotton fabric from the US, Mali and other countries, and sometimes the time we need the material for work is not yet in, it delays. So we discover the second-hand clothes in the markets.
Yeah, so shopping is necessary. The rate that people shop at is what is really the issue. The growth of the clothing industry is completely unsustainable. So I don't think that it is possible or likely or even necessary for every person to stop shopping completely. But I think making more conscious decisions to shop secondhand, to research manufacturers and brands before you purchase, to truly recognize the labor that goes into making every piece of clothing, and to understand where this piece of clothing is going to end up is really important for all consumers to make the most educated decision before they make a purchase.
The green tax is definitely real. I do think that if you can't afford sustainable clothing, because it is very expensive, I can definitely not build a wardrobe from sustainable clothing.
If you are working minimum wage, you cannot go spend $50 on a t-shirt. If you don't have a coat for the winter and you need a coat, you're gonna go try to buy the cheapest coat you can have because you have other needs that need to be met.
Shopping secondhand is very effective. At least on a personal level, I feel sort of satisfaction when I'm like, oh, this is such a good find. I mean, I can't believe somebody would throw this away. So if you're looking for a sort of personal satisfaction while also trying to aid the global crisis that we're experiencing, visit your local thrift store.
People like new things, we get that. New as in a new moment. It doesn't necessarily have to be a new piece of fabric.
Obviously, I'm one person. Me passing down a shirt to my brother isn't going to solve the whole crisis, but the thought is, if we pass down more things, less things will need to be bought, less things will need to be made.
It's not just good enough to pass the clothes to my younger cousins or my neighbor's kids or whatever. With this comes some sort of responsibility, and with this comes a level of educational awareness that, hey, I'm giving these clothes over to you because I think that you might be able to use them, and these are the reasons why I would prefer that they are not like just being discarded, and that's good for all of us. But also, I want you to think about when you're done using it, what will you do with it? What's going to be your move?
I think it's important for the bigger companies, they have to make the change first. You know, when you see these huge companies that are able to stand up and say, hey, we're going to take a hit on profit for whatever, and we are going to, we believe in the value of people and the value of the planet more than the value of the dollar, then change will follow.
I think we need to be bolder in thinking about how the government and policies can shape public health. When people talk about textile waste, you hear so much about individual solutions, like stop buying so many clothes. These are the things that you individually can do. And not to diminish the impacts of those actions, but really what we need is policy action and policy change. For example, Massachusetts has a new policy that's going into effect that will ban textiles from landfills.
When I first sort of heard about the project and learned about the whole notion of textile waste and fast fashion, something that I can honestly say I didn't know very much about, and was sort of shocked, terrified, and really sort of intrigued by the whole notion that we could do so much harm from throwing out clothing and other kinds of textiles. So just the sheer fact that I didn't know about it suggested to me that a lot of other people didn't know about it, and so I got interested in trying to figure out how can we teach people about this kind of waste. And so so I got involved with the first wave of the project, and now this is the second stage where we're looking at developing a game, something I've also done a lot of work in before, working on projects to do game design, particularly game design, to help people learn. So the idea of educational gaming or even games for good, games for change is something that I've been familiar with, and so this was an opportunity to work on that. And I thought, you know, what better a thing again than something that I think the vast majority of people just don't have any understanding of when they get dressed in the morning and buy new clothing and things like that. Do this. I think I'm sort of interested now in going, how do we design a game that might really provoke interest and make people change their behaviors in some way?
I would say that the documentary has inspired me to learn more about my role in this global issue and the ways that I can take action to mitigate the negative environmental impacts in my community.
I will say that my perspective before was kind of just like, it's been donated. I've seen it in use even, so I kind of just left it at that.
I wasn't fully aware before that after clothes have been donated to larger distributors like Goodwill or Salvation Army, that they can end up in landfills as well, and especially be shipped into overseas markets where there is significantly less regulation and allows for more pollutants in the area.
Yeah, so personally I can't really go shopping anymore. The mall has totally been ruined for me.
This has definitely had an impact on my own choices and my wardrobe, and even, you know, like gift giving to people.
Really thinking about what I do with my clothes and really thinking about, do I need to buy something new?
I personally hope that, first of all, it raises awareness, and just seeing this, you know, mountain of recycled clothes, there'll be a visceral reaction.
What I really want people to take away is that it is a mountain. It's a mountain of an issue, but there are things that we can do.
One thing I want people to kind of take away by looking at our work is the mass of the impact that everybody has on the planet, on the people around them, you know.
For someone who's never thought about this issue before, which every one of us on this team has been that person before, we had a moment of awakening that led us to care about this issue. The most important thing that individuals can do is to become educated about the issue.
I hope people recognize that there is hope and action is will not be useless.
It seems overwhelming, but there's a lot of small choices you can make every day to have an impact.